Hello, and thank you for listening. Before we dive into today's exciting episode, I have a small request. If you're enjoying the Book and Lounge podcast, please take a moment to subscribe. Your support helps us to continue to bring you engaging discussions on your favourite books. Now let's dive into today's episode, where I'm joined by Katrina and Taiwo. How are you guys?
I'm fine,
thank you. And you?
You really both sound really enthusiastic.
It's a while since I read the book now, so I'm hoping I'll remember everything properly.
Oh, it's fine. It's more discussing the themes around the book rather than the storyline itself. So hopefully we shall have an interesting conversation.
That's easier.
Talking about the themes.
Yeah, I think it's easier. Probably more interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. For people who are listening anyway, I think it's more interesting because if you haven't read the book and people are talking about all these things that have happened and you're like, well, don't really know very much about that. Whereas if you're talking about themes generally, I think it's, Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. So Taiwo, I think it was you that, either you or Kao that recommended this. Can't remember now. So I wonder if you could maybe start by just telling us what it's about and why you recommended it.
I recommended it because my brother enjoys, I think he's read all of his books now. He hasn't written that many. I think he's written 5 books, if I'm not mistaken. My brother read 4 of them. And he suggested that I read him because he said he's quite entertaining.
Okay.
So, and also because the genre itself, it being crime fiction, and it's something that we haven't really read for quite a while, I thought, let's give it a go. Razorblade Tears wasn't my preferred choice, but an S.A. Cosby is an S.A. Cosby. So it's an introduction, I guess, to his work. My brother tends to read authors in the dates in which they publish their work. He says that enables him to kind of get an idea as they grow and develop and mature as an author. He can sometimes see that progression. I don't know whether that's true. Yeah. He suggested
so
it.
Where does this one fall? Sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to ask, where does this one fall within the order?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'd have to look into it.
No worries.
I don't think this is his very first one. This might be his, I have a feeling it's his third, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay. But anyway, I like the idea of the story being about the fathers rather than the sons. Kind of has a big, almost redemptive arc or a storyline of growth and development. And
do you want to maybe tell us what it's about?
It's the story of 2 fathers of 2 sons who are dead, and it's the death of the sons that joins the fathers together in a joint enterprise. That's what the story's about.
A joint enterprise of basically trying to avenge the death of their sons.
If that is possible. Some would argue that you can't avenge, that you should leave these things for a higher power. Be it God, be it Nemesis, the universe, whatever you want to say. Others would say, no, you have to, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You have to kind of level the playing ground? No, that's not right.
Playing field kind of thing.
You have to kind of bring about a balance in the books. That's what some people would say.
And did you enjoy the book? What was your overall impression of S.A. Cosby?
I found it a very easy read. I like the fact that he's, like my beloved Stephen King, a very good writer when it comes to pacing. Each chapter keeps the story moving forward at a prompt clip. So there's no lagging, there's no faffing around, there's no excessive description or meandering down blind alleys. He keeps the story moving progressively forward. It's very action-oriented. Some of it is a little bit maybe implausible, but it's a good yarn. And I like a good story where you can suspend your disbelief and just go with the flow. And I found that that's one of the things that he does well. It kind of reads itself. For me anyway, it reads itself. It's one of those books that I enjoyed because I didn't struggle to read it. I just kept going. And it's a fun read. My aunt, who started reading it when I told her what I was reading, said it's too violent and put it to one side and didn't go back to it. So it is pretty violent. But at the same time, Is that kind of, I don't know, could you call it comic book violence? I mean, violence is violence. It is not great, but
Was it comic book?
when you kind of when you consume violence, or maybe it's just boys, maybe it's just men. You consume violence, you get to that point where it doesn't seem real anymore. So it's like, you've got a machine gun, no, you're mowing down all these baddies. Their death doesn't seem to mean anything to you anymore. It's all very simplistic. There's no grey. It's all black and white. That's how it is.
You've been
Limited
Well,
sensitized.
nuance.
yes, I
Sorry,
mean
Katrina, carry on.
it's fiction.
Yes,
Sorry, I just say it's fiction. You know you're reading fiction.
yes.
Nobody's really getting hurt. You can just enjoy the fun of it. It is definitely very brutal in places, but I enjoyed it for the reasons you were saying. The pace is so nice and sharp, and you just get through the story, and that was fine. But at the same time, you don't want to delve too deeply into the plausibility of some of it.
It's not real
I,
life,
on the
is
other
it?
hand,
Sorry
sorry,
to interrupt. I just say it's not
no,
real life, and it doesn't
No,
pretend to be real life.
exactly. Mhm.
I struggled with it. I think probably for the same reason as your aunt. I thought it was very violent, but also I thought there's too much bad language. That that just really annoyed me. And then the unrealistic nature of it. Yeah, I struggled very much to suspend my disbelief. It was also very predictable. You knew exactly what was going to happen. And then I think the final thing that I really struggled with was his style of writing. I guess having read the previous book and also having started Hisham Matar's book, I felt like the writing was a bit amateurish, sorry to say, if I compare it to the other two books. So, because of all those reasons, I did not enjoy it. I can understand, the thriller, the suspense part of it, but all of that was so predictable that it just like, I knew that was going to happen anyway. So I would say this is not one of my favorites. But having said that, it does explore some really interesting themes. And the central theme is something that most of the time we avoid talking about. So, in that regard, I respect him for actually trying to tackle the issue head on. So, as we said, the book explores the positions of Ike and Buddy Lee, who are the two fathers, and it explores their quest for vengeance. And I felt that this quest was sort of at odds with what their sons would do, because I don't think Isaiah and Derek were the kind of person that would have been happy with them going on this killing spree and doing what they did. So, do you think that there's a more, I think Tayo slightly touched on this, do you think that there's a moral cost to obtaining justice? And can vigilantism be ethically justified?
I don't know if it's ethically justified. The fact that you get justice doesn't bring anybody back, doesn't necessarily make you feel better about it all. But you don't know that until you've got it, I suppose. It's a way of grieving, isn't it? In those sort of circumstances that you put all your energies into this so-called justice, whatever shape and form it takes. And then having done that, I imagine you feel pretty flat and none the better for it, really.
Mm. Tayo, anything to add?
I think my answer is a simple and straight, flat no. It's not ethically justified to seek retribution. And if you try to hide behind the defense of, well, I'm balancing the books, as it were, because they killed my son, so I'm going to kill them. How do you weigh it up? Is it one life for one life? And also, Ike and the other guy, I've forgotten his name now.
Buddy Lee.
I like him. Pardon?
Buddy Lee.
That's it. I
Buddy.
like Buddy.
Mm.
Ike and Buddy killed a number of people, and you
More
knew
than
that
a
they were
number of
going to.
people.
Pardon?
More than a number of people. They killed a lot
Well,
of people.
well, two is a number. Two is okay. Yes, they killed a lot of people, and I don't see how that really justifies the death of their two sons. I don't see that dipping your hands in blood is going to help you deal with the pain. And or they were in a lot of pain for the loss of their sons, but they're also in a lot of pain because the opportunity to actually actively show love to their sons had been lost forever, and there was no
Mm.
going back. And they recognized that. So
was there a quest for justice and vengeance? Was it really more about them rather than about avenging their sons? Because for me, it seemed like they were feeling guilty because they hadn't accepted their children for who they were. And so because of that, they then now decided that actually they need to make up for it. But they were really not making up for what they had done. If you see what I mean, I didn't feel that their quest was genuine. It was more about them, because I don't even think that their sons would have been happy with them going on this violence spree.
in
No, but they
retribution
didn't
for the past.
understand this. I was going to say they didn't understand their sons very well anyway, did they? But no, I agree with you completely, Jackie. It was all about them dealing with their own responses, wasn't it?
There's a way to try to assuage, whatever. There's a way for them to try and get over their guilt. And you could see it anyway in the way that Ike related to the son's daughter. The way he kept her at a distance, he couldn't handle her, unlike his wife that had drawn her close and was putting her own grieving to one side in order to try to. Although the little girl was so young, I'm not sure that she was actually even actively grieving anyway. She may not have been fully aware of the
No,
death
she
of her
wasn't.
father's.
She
Yeah,
wasn't.
but Ike couldn't deal with the pain, and so he pushed her away. So again, Ike is dealing with self. It's it's me, Ike. That is not justice. Killing people that have killed your loved ones, that is not justice. As simple as that. It's just a way to try to deal with the guilt and also the fact that they both have violent backgrounds. And although Ike had given up, the whole, what was his name? Was it Rampage or something?
Randolph.
No, that was his surname, wasn't it?
It
He
was
had a
Randolph.
name.
Riot.
Riot, that's it.
Riot,
Riot.
Okay,
yeah,
Yeah.
Rampage,
yes.
but Riot, yeah. That name
Mm.
was given to him for a reason. That moniker was given to him for a very good reason. And it's like bringing back the old man, the old Riot. And this gives you the opportunity to let Riot do his thing, to let him loose. But the guilt
Well,
won't go away.
he,
Just because he killed dozens of
yeah,
people, the guilt won't go away.
he had the self-awareness that that would happen, didn't he? Because he tried to sort of avoid being drawn back into that way initially. But Buddy Lee managed to provoke him. He knows he's going to go back into his sort of very brutal ways if that switch is triggered, so to speak. But then he
So then
does.
does that mean then that we can't really run away from our past, no matter how much we choose? Because he'd spent 15 years trying to shed Riot and his previous life. Do you think that we can truly escape our past? And what conditions do you think allow for genuine transformation?
But the whole idea of running away, I mean, that's not a good way of dealing with the past or escaping. I think it might be better to try to embrace the past in order to lay those ghosts to rest, because it's a part and parcel of who you are and how you got to where you are in the present. So
Mm-hmm.
even though the past may be very painful and you may have done a lot of bad things, as Riot had done, if you accept that, I think that's a better way of trying to handle the past into the present rather than trying to escape it or run away. But also, I think you shouldn't overlook the fact that he got permission in quote, from his
From
wife.
his
So
wife.
his wife was supporting him
Mhm.
to go out and kill, bring back Riot kind of thing. Clearly, she too was in pain and was grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I just feel that grief is not a good emotion for you to make informed decisions by or
Mm.
through.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that you can get away from your past and you can start completely a new life and then not go back to your past if you deal with it
I
correctly. Is that
don't.
what you're saying? Katrina, carry on.
It'll vary person to person, won't it? Because after all, these characters are fiction. It's the way the plot evolves. But in real life, like Taiwo is saying, depending on how you deal with the past that you're trying to change from, it will probably depend on that, the extent to which you really can change. I think it would just be a matter of different people, really.
Mm.
But also,
Yeah.
the point that I was making was not that you can't get away from your past or that you can get away from your past. I'm flipping the script and looking at it from a different angle. I'm saying that the past is always going to be a part of you. The past is what made you who you are now in the present. So
Mm.
trying to pretend or somehow ignore it entirely, I think is not helpful to you. I think you need to take it into account. That can be a foundation that will steer you in the right direction, not to go back and make those mistakes that you made in the past again, now in the present, and even in the future. Not to ignore it. So the idea of running away or escaping is almost like seeking to negate it. No, don't negate it. Embrace it, and embrace the fact that you're not who you used to be.
Kind of like Paul and Saul and Damascus.
Hey, my sister, church girl, conversion.
No conversion.
As opposed to conversion therapy.
Which I think these fathers actually, which I think these fathers would have been really happy for. I think I agree with you. I think you can leave your past behind if you truly want to and you've done the work. Because you do hear of, even in real life, of people who, I was an ex-drug dealer and now I'm teaching young boys to stay away from knife crime and so on. So you hear all of those stories of people who've completely turned their lives around. It can be hard, especially if you've got triggers that keep pulling you back, like in this instance with Ike. So I think it is possible, but I think you need to be a really strong person to be able to resist the factors that pull you back. The other thing I wanted to ask then, Ike, Buddy Lee, they never really accepted or tolerated their children. I just wondered, in contemporary society now, how often do we mistake tolerance for progress? And what does true acceptance require from us? Because I feel that there's a lot of things that as a society we just live with and we don't genuinely, I guess, say how we feel about things because we are afraid of the backlash or of being cancelled or afraid that our views don't necessarily meet the expectations of what is accepted.
But when you say tolerate, though, I mean both Isaiah and
Derek.
Yeah. Yes. Isaiah and Derek, I mean, they're more than just their sexual orientation, aren't they? Their sexuality is only a part of them. And in terms of tolerance, the word I've written down, tolerance, is not equal to love. It's not. It's clearly not the same thing. Yeah. So there's a big difference and a wide chasm between tolerating someone and loving someone. I think it's possible for Ike and Buddy Lee to have loved their sons in spite of them not agreeing with their sexual orientation. Still possible, because we're all multidimensional, aren't we? We're all not multidimensional, multifaceted. What's the word?
Faceted.
Yeah, that's it. We're all multifaceted, aren't we? There are many aspects to each and every one of us. So some parts of us you can like and some parts of us you can dislike. But overall, you can still like the person, even if you don't like certain aspects of that person.
That's not necessarily what I was asking.
What were you asking?
I was just thinking about more where nowadays, as a society, we may not agree with a view or an opinion or an idea, but I guess because we are afraid that we will not be considered right in our views, or because our views goes against what general society thinks is right, we're now just much more willing to tolerate stuff because we're afraid to put our heads above the parapet.
But isn't part of the... Okay, Katrina, did you want to say something?
No, you go. I'm still thinking about it.
Okay, but it isn't part of the reason why people are afraid to own their own opinions, even if those opinions are maybe disagreeable to certain people. Isn't it because we live in a time where it's disagreeable to disagree? So if you're seen to swim upstream when everyone is swimming downstream or just floating downstream, then you can easily be either cancelled. So there are social consequences which can also lead to financial and economic consequences, simply because you are voicing an opinion that maybe other people do not agree with. I mean, they talk about the culture wars, don't they? This is part and parcel of the culture wars, where in the past maybe we could debate things and we could agree to disagree, and have a civil conversation, even if maybe I'm right wing, you're left wing, and we agree to disagree on our politics.
Mm-hmm.
But now people tend to kind of shout down anyone that doesn't agree and kind of, they call names and try to ostracize people. So I think people are very intolerant, and that's what people seem to be afraid of. So people don't want to take ownership of their opinion. They rather keep quiet.
I feel like there's always been a tendency for people to avoid talking about politics and religion, so to speak, to avoid conflict. You say about people don't disagree now. Well, maybe they don't when they just step outside the front door and they're talking to one of their neighbours. But people actually are disagreeing quite profoundly in the public space. And it's very shouty, and this group of people think this is right and you'll be cancelled by them if you don't agree. But then you've got another group of people who've got, the opposite ideas. What I think is just people aren't prepared to explain their ideas, and as soon as they realise that you've got or you tend to a different view to them, it's like, well, you're not the right sort of people, we don't want to talk to you, rather than actually try to explain why I come to this conclusion. And there's none of that sort of really thinking through how it is. It's much more people responding to their feelings and not analysing why they have those feelings, I think.
Yeah, we now live in a society where we're not willing to listen. I do agree with you. We're not willing to listen to the other point of view or the other person's perspective. Everybody wants to be right. And tolerance is not something that's encouraged, or at least just considering where the other person's coming from. And I guess accepting that we are all different people and that we all have different views, different beliefs, different cultural backgrounds. I think that's where, unfortunately, society is heading. And I'm not sure. Well, it's not that I'm not even sure. I don't think that's a good thing. Well, we're heading through a very dangerous path because we're just going to get more and more polarized. Gosh, I can't say I can't say the words today. But yeah, that's where I think we're heading. So grief.
Also, the whole idea that, the
Carry
idea
on.
that Katrina raised, I think the word is nuance, isn't it? There's no capacity for nuance in argument where things aren't black necessarily and they aren't white. There may be shades of grey, but because things like tweeting, you're very limited in what you can say or express. So the nuance gets lost when you send out a tweet. And also the emotion, as you said, you don't think, you use your emotion to just react. So therefore, people tend to go with sound bites. And sound bites, like a headline, can be very misinformed and misleading. And I think it's something that Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie said when she was being questioned, that kind of third degree questioning, is a trans woman a woman? And she said a trans woman is a trans woman. Now, she's factually correct, but obviously emotionally, that's not what certain people wanted to hear. So they went for her.
Yeah.
So the whole nuance of her position seemed to be lost. We need to cancel her. She needs to pay some kind of a price because she said a trans woman is a trans woman, despite its factual accuracy. And also, I think one of the things that she said also was about the lack of tolerance and allowing people to grow. We're able to make mistakes and we're able to grow from those mistakes. The mistakes we make don't need to be found as if to say they're fundamentally fatal to us. There is some kind of hanging offense that we should be able to forgive and learn that people's position can change over time as they grow, develop, and mature.
Very true. And coming back to Buddy Lee and Ike, did you feel that they grew at all as the novel progressed? Did they change? Both of them were very homophobic.
I think they did to a certain extent. They were forced to think through a little bit more about, their previous opinions. And I mean, also for Buddy Lee and Ike, where they're discussing about race things that presumably Buddy Lee hadn't had occasion to think about before, really. I thought there was a degree of growth.
Did the growth come about as a result of the body count? As the body count rose, so the growth generally increased. There's a price for growth.
Well, there were some things that weren't growth at all, were there? Except in the sense of what you put on your garden plants.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, that scene just disturbed me so much.
That was gruesome.
Yeah, yeah. Oh. Just thinking, just thinking about it sends shivers down my back.
If you're killing someone and you do it at a distance with a bullet or by a drone, that's one thing. But if you have to get into close quarters combat kind of fighting where you've got a blade in your hand and you can smell the blood as you cut a person's throat, or you can hear the death rattle, their last gasps. This is not something that most people can do. It stays with you, and you need to be able to sleep. You need to be able to live with yourself.
But I think people get sensitized, don't they? So the more you do it, it doesn't mean anything after a while because you've done it so many times.
But who does that? Who does that many times? Who does that more than once?
Well, Riot did for a start, but also soldiers who go to war. I'm assuming that the first time someone dies as a result of your gun, maybe you think about it. But I think after a while, you stop thinking about it. You stop seeing people as human.
But some other people, I think it goes the other way, though, doesn't it? Where you start suffering from PTSD and nightmares, and you can't really adjust to civilian life again because you're so traumatized, etc., etc. So I guess it depends upon the kind of person that you are.
But and at the time as well, you've got to block it. You've got to distance yourself, haven't you? Because otherwise, you're not going to be able to do what you're supposed to be doing as a soldier. But then it can come back to you, can't it? When you actually all the action stops and you're demobbed or whatever it is, and that's when the reactions kick in. But I think being a gangster, I imagine that to be slightly different.
There is that element, though, isn't there, of, as they used to call it in the days of enslavement, the process of, I've forgotten the word now, it's on the tip of my tongue. You know, where they send a military person to boot camp to indoctrinate them so that they can become a human killing machine. So it's the same thing. Oh, seasoning, that's it.
Okay.
So the Middle Passage, no, from the fort, no, even before the fort, before you're on the coastline in a fort like in Ghana or wherever, the journey from where you get captured to where you get kept on the coast is a process of seasoning. When you're in the fort, in the dungeon, you are further seasoned. The Middle Passage, if you can survive the Middle Passage, that's proper seasoning. By the time you then get to South Carolina or wherever, Barbados, they will season you further. You know, the whole thing of stripping away your humanity, taking away your culture, your language, your name, your very being. For you to become an enslaved person, you have to be seasoned. Otherwise, you're going to riot, aren't you? You're going to resist. So in the same way, I think there are processes whereby, you know, with those kind of fraternities in America, where they do the whole thing. I think they call it hazing or something, don't they? Initiation. That's it. They initiate you into their society. So it's the same thing. It's a form of indoctrination.
Yeah. So, Katrina, you mentioned, I think it was you that mentioned class and race. So I felt that the fact that there were two men from different racial backgrounds complicated the narrative a little bit. So Buddy Lee is poor, resentful of middle class people, and bitter about his own struggles. But he doesn't understand because he feels that Riot is doing very well for himself. He's middle class, or he's in a better off situation than he is. And so, why do you think the author chose to use two men from two different racial backgrounds? And can we discuss race without discussing class inequality?
What I did quite like about the book was the fact that it was so fast paced and lots of things were happening, and it was quite amusing in several places. It seems to me the author has decided he wants to give some little talks about race and about sexuality. But they weren't as irritating as they can be because the rest of the story took me along. Because otherwise, I would have thought it's a bit of an opportunity for the author to get on a little speech about things via these conversations. This is all in America, and I really don't know anything about it. Over here, I think race and class are very intertwined.
Well, I felt it was a good device, though, wasn't it, to make them of different racial origin, because it shows that human sexuality has little to do with, if anything, ethnic background and origin anyway. So whatever your race, your orientation is your orientation. Yes, using those intersectionalities of race and class and financial well-being, wealth, affluence. I think it was a good device rather than getting all preachy, and, as Katrina was saying, getting on his high horse. It was a subtle way to
Mm.
delve into those themes and how they interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't as if, say, Ike was born to wealth. He came from a difficult background and he went down a particular pathway that led him towards the whole incarceration and all that that entails as a black man. And then he had to kind of reinvent himself. He found something that he seemed to be good at, and he seems to have struggled and made a success.
Mm-hmm.
So he had something to lose, didn't he, by going on this rampage when he put on the persona of Riot once again. He had a lot to lose, actually, financially, whereas Buddy Lee didn't have a lot to lose.
I think one thing I liked about how he dealt with the issue is it was more the journey that Buddy Lee went on, because he didn't realize his white privilege and he felt down and sorry for himself, not realizing that actually, despite the fact that Ike was much better off than him financially, because of his race, he still suffered a lot more than Buddy Lee. Ike couldn't drive a decent car without being stopped. And these are the kind of things that Buddy Lee was just never really aware of. And I think the other thing that really did get me thinking was that if you don't really hang out with people from different backgrounds, these are kind of things that you probably don't even think about, because why is it your problem? Why are you even thinking about it? So sometimes I feel that we blame people for not being aware. But then I'm thinking to myself, where are they going to get the opportunity to be aware if they don't have people from various different backgrounds in their lives? And I think this book kind of illustrated that really well. So I sometimes think that, yeah, there's a lot of ignorance out there, not because people are bad, but just because, well, I mean, they've never really had to deal with any of these things.
I think the word is exposure, isn't it? Because the more
Mhm.
friends and the more communities that you're engaged in, rather than just
Mm.
being in your own little silo, it's like with the book club. I think it was maybe some years ago, and I used this example of myself. I said that as a man, I didn't used to think about returning home late from wherever I've been to, walking down a dark alley. I wouldn't really think about it. I think if at all I'm going to feel a little bit afraid, I'll be thinking if I'm going to go down, I'm not going down on my own. It's as simple as that. I'm not going down on my own. Whereas being in the book club now, I remember talking about that, and a woman was talking about, well, I need to plan my journey home. And I was quite surprised. I was like, what do you mean by plan your journey home? It's, well, if you're leaving a club or the restaurant at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. or something, you need to know whether you're going to be able to get a cab. Is the street lighted or is it all in darkness? The route home, you plan in advance to try to limit the risk. So she's trying to limit the risk of exposure to harm.
Mm.
And I'd never thought of that. I'd really never thought of that. It's not something that, I mean, I have sisters and aunts, but it's not something I've ever discussed with my sisters or aunts. So I'd never ever thought of that. But once she explained it to me, then I gained some exposure into how life can be very different for different people.
Hmm.
So, like you said, it's not necessarily that I'm a bad person, not that I'm good, but I just had never thought of it that way.
We can say that this book maybe is an eye opener for people who read it, because it makes you start reflecting and then seeing things maybe from a different perspective.
It was so subtle, wasn't it?
Hmm.
Because it was just almost like an off comment, an off the cuff remark between Buddy Lee and Ike about
Yeah.
the whole thing of, the police and how the police deal with you. And Ike's educating Buddy Lee, even if I had just a little bit of weed on me, I could get a long stretch, or I could get a couple of years, or I could get hassled. Whereas Buddy Lee is saying, well, well, the police can't really do anything. I've known, people that have had a lot of contraband on themselves, and yet the police turn a blind eye. So it's like showing each other the different worlds that they're living in. It was done very subtly, but done also quite gracefully as well. He didn't kind of bang on and hammer the
labor the
point
point.
home. He just did it as almost an aside. And I felt that was a much more effective way than getting on his soapbox and preaching about the issue.
Yeah, the showing and not telling. Sorry, carry on, Katrina.
Just agreeing. I was agreeing with that. And there's a point in the story where Buddy Lee realizes that he needs to go and talk to various people in a neighborhood because they probably aren't going to respond at all to a black person, because I suppose it's white. Obviously, it's a white neighborhood. And again, he doesn't seem to have really thought of that as it seems to be a new ideas coming into his head about how the world works.
Mm-hmm. So the novel emphasizes that death eliminates any possibility of reconciliation. So as we see from the two main characters. So the fathers are haunted by the realization that they can never really say sorry to their sons. So how do you think unresolved trauma, not trauma, how do you think unresolved trauma, I can't speak today. I don't know what's wrong with me. How do you think unresolved trauma carries forward within families? And do you think, what do you think the novel is suggesting about reconciliation and the urgency of reconciliation?
You want to go for it, Katrina?
I suppose if you happen to read that book and some of those issues about maybe not necessarily about sexuality, but riffs you have with your grown up children about things they've been doing, or even the other way round, if you're the child and it's your parent, I guess it might make you think there's only time like the present to make rapprochements with people. And it is going to be too late once they've gone. Of course, we never really think people are going to, until somebody's very old or very ill, we don't really think in those terms, do we? But maybe the book might make you feel a bit more like that. Aren't there sort of grief therapy things where you'd sort of write a letter to your dead person that you want to say sorry to about something? I'm not sure if that's effective, but I bet there's
It's better
I
than
don't
that
know. I think
nowadays,
if you have
Katrina.
if you have a religious thing, but then at the end of theirs, it's terrible, isn't it? Because is it the beginning or is it the beginning where the pastors keep plugging on about the fact that they were gay, and that was quite funny, but not funny if you were in the not funny at all in real life. Yeah, so religion can be a two-edged sword for these sort of problems as well, can't it? Sometimes it helps people, sometimes it doesn't. Best to be on good terms while everyone's still alive, isn't it?
Well, Katrina, you say that. You mentioned grief letters. We now have grief bots. And
What do they
also, we also have, what do they call him? I can't remember what the term is, but you can use technology to resurrect your dead one and speak to them and have conversations with them. So maybe you can actually have that conversation and then get that forgiveness.
Yes, you could go to some sort of seance, or does AI do
There's
it
that
for
as
you
well.
nowadays?
Oh,
I'm
AI is
sure it
now
must
the
do.
go-to.
Well, some people will find that helpful, no doubt.
I
Yeah.
guess as long as you know what you're doing and what the AI bot is doing, then if that helps you to reach some kind of level of closure, or if it helps you move forward in life so that you can actually live rather than just exist, then maybe it's helpful. But the whole idea of you've gathered all this information on this person, their speech patterns and many words and sentences that they've said, and then the algorithm is stringing it all together so that when you speak, it will answer in a coherent way. Various intelligent birds can communicate with us, can't they? As in,
Mhm.
when you speak to them, they know how to say certain things back. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a level of understanding of what they're saying. They just recognize certain patterns of words and they know how to respond normally in a way that is coherent or intelligible. So the same with grief bots. It's not the person. The person has gone. It's just algorithm. That's all
I
it
agree
is.
with you, Taiwo. I agree with you. It's just another way for companies to make money.
If it helps people to some
Does it though?
extent. Grief is supposed to be a process, isn't it? Is it a 7-step process
I thought it was
like the
5.
AA? Or is it 5? Okay, there are a number of steps
I thought
anyway.
it was 5.
There's more than one step, and it takes as long as it takes. For some people, it will take years or decades. For some people, much shorter period of time. But as Katrina was saying, I think it gives us perspective, doesn't it, about the fact that tomorrow isn't guaranteed to any of us. So make use of the time that you have now. Now is very important to try and make the best use of the time. The first part of the question you asked about was to do with something about generational trauma.
What I was thinking about there is because so Buddy Lee, he has a terrible, I guess, background with his father. And then he sort of perpetuates, gosh, what is wrong with me today? He sort of perpetuates that with his own son, with how he treats his son. And so how does unresolved trauma carry forward within families?
But I think context is very important, though, because with Buddy Lee, I think it was mainly to do with his son's sexuality. That was the key issue, possibly also with Ike. With Buddy Lee's dad, I think Buddy Lee's dad was he abusive or was he just cold and distant and uncaring and unloving?
It was all of those.
Oh, all of those. Okay, fine. So it wasn't one particular thing in Buddy Lee. I think Buddy Lee's, in Buddy Lee the boy that the dad was reacting to. I think Buddy Lee's dad was just a bad one.
But do you think,
just wasn't
okay,
a good father.
so I guess what you're saying is that had Derek not been, it's Derek, isn't it? Had Derek
Yeah.
not been homosexual, then maybe he would not have suffered the abuse that he underwent, or he wouldn't have been treated the way he was by his father. Because did he not used to beat him?
Well, I think that was when. Go on, Katrina.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was, well, in Buddy Lee's case with his son, there's a sort of trigger. But when that trigger occurs, which was his son's homosexuality, then he goes into the patterns that he knows from his own childhood, isn't it? Now, it might be that if something else had happened, if, I don't know, something else had occurred which was very upsetting, the same response would have happened. But in that particular case, it was the sexuality. If there'd been no triggers, perhaps there'd be no abuse. Because I think we do quite easily fall into our family patterns. I think there's some things that you think about when you're growing up or when you're, a young adult. You think, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that differently. And you make a deliberate effort. But the things that you haven't really thought through that maybe just, crop up spontaneously, I think I've certainly heard, I'm thinking when my children were younger, I suddenly think, oh my God, that's my mother speaking, and it's sort of coming out of my mouth, but it's her words.
Wow.
And you sort of realize how you're just, I don't know, you're just following a
It's just
pattern
an
that,
extension of your
yeah,
parent.
yes, and
I
until
think
you sort of think about it. So I
parenting was.
suppose, yeah, sorry, go on.
I'm just saying, Katrina, in response to what you just said, if your parenting is about, for example, maybe discipline, and you hear yourself saying words to your sons that your mother said to you, if it's simply about positive guidance or instruction, as in don't go out with these people because they'll lead you astray or whatever. I mean, is it necessarily a bad thing if that
Oh no,
guided you and now you're guiding them?
yeah, no, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just, I mean, it would depend on the occasions, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it's just interesting how you sort of imprinted with something that when you're in a spontaneous situation that you can easily just sort of start following those patterns. So I imagine if you've had a very traumatic and difficult things happening in the past in your own family, and particular patterns, not necessarily abusive ones, but it's easy for those reactions to circumstances to get reproduced, I think.
Just to follow on from that, I'm pretty sure I've read somewhere that most people who are abusers were themselves abused. So that's that
That's what they say.
pattern, carrying forward. And also people who have children young, also their children also go on to have children when they're still young, as in teenage parents. So I think those patterns, and I'm pretty sure there is evidence out there that those patterns carry forward. So I've got just one other topic that I wanted to explore, and that's masculinity. I've noticed that we haven't really talked about the women in the book. So Derek's and Ike's mother, they play very minor characters. Christine, Derek's mum, her actions actually have a profound effect on the son, because it then maps out how he turns out and what happens to him and how that affects him. But having said that, she still plays a very minor character in the book. I think the book is very male focused. And one thing that I think that we learn from the book is that both fathers are trapped by the notion of masculinity. And so they don't like to be emotionally vulnerable. So the question is, do narrow definitions of masculinity harm men? And what would life look like if men processed their emotions differently?
I think they probably can be harmful. A narrow definition of what a man is and masculinity probably can be harmful. But I'd say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. So I wouldn't really expect a man to process his emotions in exactly the same way that a woman does. I mean, a woman processes her emotions in a way that maybe suits her as a woman. And maybe that's true for men. Now, I was listening to, what's that program on Saturdays? On Radio 4 anyway, I was listening to one of those programs in the morning, and there was someone talking about some club that he created called Pints and Ponytails, or is it Ponytails and Pints? Ponytails and Pints, maybe. So it's a single parent father raising a daughter, and he had this idea of meeting in the pub with a couple of his mates who also have a daughter or daughters, learning how to plait and braid and take care of their hair. And he found that it kind of just took off. And after a while, people all over the world started to make inquiries of how can we start our own chapter in Sydney, Tokyo, Kampala, wherever, of Pints and Ponytails. And they found that part of the reason why it became so popular is that men and women have very different ways of communicating. So where a group of women would face each other to communicate, men tend to like to be by the side of each other. They don't like to look directly at each other. So if they're plaiting their daughter's hair, learning how to do a ponytail, I think the first session they had a professional hairdresser come in to teach them different hairstyles for their daughters. And then they kind of started learning things themselves from there. So they're sitting next to each other, but they're able to, and they have their pints as well. I think they probably do the plaiting before they drink. Otherwise, things can just go left field. But it was an opportunity for them to be able to engage with their emotions and talk about what it's like. You know, some of them had lost their wives or partners. Some had separated or divorced. Some had financial issues, or all kinds of things. But as they're engaged in doing the work with their daughter's hair, they're able to engage with their emotions and open up. And that's the beauty of the difference in the communication between the male and the female.
Maybe, but I just think that it's not that it's not true in some respects, but there's such a range of behavior amongst, let's say, amongst women, because obviously that's easier for me to talk about. But I think there's such a range of ways women might respond to things, how they communicate, how they react, and men as well. It's quite difficult to imagine this is masculine behavior, this is feminine behavior. I feel like the range is very broad.
But does society not expect this is, what a man should be like. Does society not place those constraints on both genders? This is what a man is supposed to be like, especially, well, let me speak from African background, where even now there's some places where a man is still not allowed in the kitchen because that's a woman's role. A boy is not supposed to cry because that's being seen as weak. So I guess those are the narrow definitions of masculinity that I'm talking about. Do you feel that we've moved away from that?
I think some people have. Obviously, some people still follow those, and some traditions are more strong on those things. But I also think there's a lot of people who have moved away from that. I just don't think it's as narrow as that. Even amongst those, I mean, think of the books we read. You get characters who are very, shall we say, masculine, and then others who are going against that way of being in the traditional, very narrow sense of masculinity. Not that they're not masculine, but they're not following those stereotypes. And I think in this society in UK now, I think there's such a range. When you talk about these men who are bringing up their children, the young fathers I know, many of them, they're so involved in the rearing of their children, much more than generations gone by. I don't think many people anyway would say that's not masculine anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's part of what's possible.
But at the same time,
But,
there are extremes to this whole spectrum, isn't there? Because you said it's quite
mm,
a large range. So the modern day father, or many modern day fathers, are much more hands on in the rearing of their children than our grandfathers or our great grandfathers ever would have been or would have
mm,
expected to be. But going back to that piece that I was listening to, they said something about being endorsed in a negative way by Andrew Tate because he had picked up on the viral, this group is doing this good thing for dads and daughters, etc., etc. And he tweeted something along the lines of, this is what we need less of. This is what he's working against, the feminization of men. I mean, he basically laid into them. I can't remember. I think the words that he used were not repeatable on Radio 4. So
mm.
you have the middle ground, which is quite large, but you still have the extremes of hyper masculinity and maybe hyper femininity at both ends.
Mm.
Yes, don't you think the sort of people who feel they need to cling to some very extreme version of masculinity or femininity, they're people who are a bit lost, really. They're having to cling on to something. Andrew Tate himself, I think, he probably just makes money out of clickbait for stuff like that. But
Have you been
it's
watching David Theroux on Netflix?
who?
Is it David Theroux? What's his name? The documentary guy. Did
Louis,
a
Louis
Louis
Theroux.
Theroux, that's the one, Louis Theroux. He did a documentary for Netflix on the manosphere. And he was
Oh,
just,
yes.
interviewing all these men who have those views that Andrew Tate supports. And it really just turned out, apparently, I haven't seen it, I've spoken to people who watched it, and it apparently just turns out that really these people don't believe in what they're saying. They're only doing it because of clicks, which is what you've just said,
Mm.
which really what Andrew Tate is doing. So you have,
Yes, that's true. That's true for so much of what we see going on, yes,
we'll
people
stop
make
there.
money out of it. Well, yeah, we'll stop there, but people make money. And
Yes, they
you
do.
say something that sounds very controversial. There's a headline, and people think, "Oh, what's that about?" It's tempting, but I think it's just about making money.
Right. So the book. One last question before we give it a score out of 5. I read this more really as, or at least when I was reading it, I was just seeing this as a film happening in my head. So I just wanted to check if you had to cast the main characters in the book, who would you cast as Buddy Lee, Ike, Maya, and whatever other character that you wanted to cast?
Well, Ike is an easy cast, isn't it? It's clearly, what's his name? I always forget how to pronounce his name. Is it Bang Rings or Ring Bangs or whatever? The guy in Mission Impossible, the black
Okay.
guy.
Yeah, I think I know. Yeah, I know
You
who
know
you
who I
mean.
mean? Because
Yeah.
he's got the right build. So yeah, he could be Ike.
It's funny because
Not sure
I
about
saw
Ike.
Samuel L. Jackson for some reason.
Samuel Jackson's not beefy enough.
He could build up. Who did you cast as Buddy Lee?
I don't know who to cast as Buddy
I
Lee,
had
'cause I like Buddy Lee.
again. I had Sylvester Stallone in my head. Old haggard, especially Sylvester Stallone now. Have you seen him recently?
Yeah, but he's still. I mean, although he's dropped some of the weight, he's still kind of got the stature of an ex-bodybuilder, hasn't he? The frame.
But he looks old and haggard and like he's basically close to death's door. So and that's how I pictured Buddy Lee. So those are the two people that I had, and then I don't think I did Christine. I had someone like Diane Keaton for Christine.
You've really thought about this, haven't you?
No, because it does read like a movie script. Seriously, it does. I mean, as I was reading it, I was picturing this on screen.
I would like it to be optioned, though, so that he can make some more money.
Katrina, did you have any people in mind as you were reading this, or have you not thought about it?
No, I can't do that at all. Firstly, because I might be able to picture an actor, but I never know their names. I never know who's who. I'm really very, very bad at that. Don't ever take me to a pub quiz for that sort of thing.
You and I both then. We have conversations at work when people are talking about all these things, and I'm just sitting there thinking, what are they talking about? So I'm with you there. I'm with you. So yes, then out of 5, what would you score it out of 5, and would you recommend it?
I'd recommend it because it's an easy read and it's an engaging read, and it's, as Katrina said, it's fast paced. So it keeps you interested in wanting to know what's going to happen next. Although, yes, for many people that are quite familiar with the written word, it's very predictable, but it does what it says on the tin. It delivers. It's pure fiction. Suspend all your disbelief. It's not too much over the top, but it clearly is fiction. So crime fiction rather than, what's the other genre? Crime.
Is a crime something else?
Yeah, there's something else. Pardon?
I don't know, true crime?
Yeah, that's it. Maybe true crime, where it's based on real events. This is just a fiction. And you know that one of the two of them has to die before the end of the movie or book. So 3.5, yeah. I had good, it's great fun reading it.
Well, I didn't hear you. What was the score?
3.5.
2. Oh, okay. I thought you got higher than that.
3. No, he said 3. 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah.
3.5.
Okay, well, I would say ditto to most of what you've just said. But I suppose in terms of recommending it, one would have to put in a bit of a caveat about it is quite gruesome in places. So some people might not like that. If it was true crime, it would be horrific, but it's fiction. So it really doesn't bother me. So yeah, 3.5, yeah, definitely. To me, it was just fun. And sometimes we don't read books which are fun. Sometimes we read books which are quite
worthy,
serious. Yes, but mind you, the next one I've started it, and well, I expected to like it, and I am liking it, and that's a very different type of thing. But anyway, so 3.5, yes, easily. I'd even sort of 3.75.
Then I'm going to let the side down. First of all, I would recommend it, but I'll be choosy who I recommend it to, because I don't think everybody is going to like it because of the language and also the violence. I'll give it a 2.5, and my 2 points, because it was humorous. Buddy Lee had some really cracking lines that had me laughing, and I just liked how he said some things. So there's that, and then secondly, the fact that actually, despite the crime and the violence and all of that, it was dealing with quite substantial issues: grief, tolerance, homosexuality, all of that. And I like the fact that he did not preach; he was showing rather than telling. What did not work is, number one, the predictability, the level of violence, the style of writing. I found myself bit frustrated sometimes reading it because of the style of writing. It didn't really do it for me. So because of that, I would give it a 2.5. So yeah, that's Razorblade Tears, and I look forward to the next one. On that note, I will say thank you guys very much for your time. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and see you next time. And thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this or any of the other episodes, please like, share, or subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.